Everyone knows Smokey the Bear. He's the unofficial mascot for the U.S. Forest Service and based on a real live bear cub pulled from a wildfire burn area in the 1950s. To this day, Smokey shows millions of visitors the fire danger level at national forests. But what exactly is Smokey trying to say? That's where Summit Fire and EMS Chief Jeff Barino comes in. He's a self-proclaimed wildfire nerd and spends at least a part of his day, every day, looking at factors that could mean a wildfire is imminent. Before the Buffalo fire burned 81 acres within 250 feet of homes in Wilderness and Mesa Cortina, Crystal 93 spoke with Barino and Summit Fire PIO Steve Lipsher about the science of wildfire and what it means when Smokey's arm moves from low to extreme. Phil Lindeman, Crystal 93 News Director, in the studio today with Summit Fire and EMS. We got Chief Jeff Barino and Public Information Officer Steve Lipsher. Guys, thanks for joining me today.
We're glad to be here.
Glad to have you. So tell me where we're at right now.
We're in the middle of green up here in Summit County. Our runoff was a little earlier than expected, which we all would expect after a low snowpack. But right now we are green. That doesn't mean we can't let our guard down. We still have to be vigilant and keep an eye on each other. But let's enjoy a fantastic weekend here in Summit County.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because the further south you go, the worse the fire danger and the conditions get. And that's kind of been the story of the year so far.
Yeah, the Four Corners area, New Mexico, Arizona, Durango area, they stand to have a very interesting and challenging summer unless things change fairly soon. Northern Colorado, Steamboat area, and Summit County's kind of on the border. We fared a little better.
Great. And now, of course, all good things must come to an end, which means Smokey the Bear, that sign will be changing. And Smokey is out from the entire summer season, from right about now until...
We moved Smokey up a few weeks, came out of hibernation a few weeks ago. We got the cobwebs out. So Smokey's out, and Smokey will stay up till we start to see some snow on the ground in early to mid-October.
Okay, and when it comes to fire danger levels, you know, it will change throughout the summer, and you guys keep a very close eye on that, and there is a science behind how those danger levels change. Tell me a little bit about what goes into changing from low to high to extreme, which is the upper level.
Yeah, fortunately, we've only been extreme in Summit County twice in my 38 years here, so let's hope we don't see that in the near future. But it is going to go up on a normal Summit County summer, whatever that is anymore. June tends to be a little drier until we hopefully see some monsoon rains kick in early to mid-July. And you're exactly right. There is science behind this. Fortunately, in the county, we have some wildfire nerds. I'm one of them. I don't know if that's good or bad, but daily we study fire weather, and we obtain readings from a fire weather station. It's located in the Soda Creek area near Keystone Golf Course, and it gives us a snapshot of one place in Summit County and a lot of valuable data that we look at every day.
Great, yeah. And what is some of that valuable data that you guys are looking at that kind of gives you a gauge of where the fire danger is?
Three big indicators, three or four. One, the relative humidity. How dry is it? We're a little luckier in Summit County with the altitude. Our RH, or relative humidity, tends to be a little higher than like in Grand Junction, for example. We also measure what's called the ERC, Energy Release Component, and that tells us how angry a fire is going to be. How many BTUs is that going to release, and how hard is it going to be to control? And the last thing we look at is wind, and that combines with something called a spread component. If we took 100 embers and threw them up in the air, how many embers would start another fire out of that 100? So there's more to it, but that's the Cliff Notes version.
Wild. So there is quite a bit that goes into it. Like I said, you know, when I think of Smokey the Bear, since I was a kid, I've been going to national parks and seeing those signs, and I've just always assumed arbitrary. They went outside and thought, feels pretty dry today. Looks pretty dry.
We also look at the weather. What's the overall weather trend for the next few days? As we know, we can get a thunderstorm in one part of Summit County and the rest stays warm and dry, or vice versa. So we have to look at the overall ratings and everything in totality. So appreciate our efforts, but we still have to stay safe no matter what Smokey says. And there's good history behind Smokey. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know the history behind Smokey. Like I said, I've been seeing him for ages. Steve, what's Smokey's story?
So Smokey was an actual bear. In the 1950s, a 3-month-old bear cub was orphaned in a fire outside of Albuquerque and rescued by firefighters. He had badly burned paws. He was nursed back to health, and he actually stayed in the National Zoo for the next 30 or so years. He lived a long life as an emblem and a living symbol of the threat of forest fires, not only to our forest, but obviously to its inhabitants. And Smokey was a local hero, a national hero, to the point where he actually had his own zip code. He got so much
That's
mail.
Good trivia, Steve. Yeah.
There you go. There's the trivia question for down at the bar later this summer.
Exactly. He got so much mail from school kids, though, that the Postal Service gave him his own zip code.
Only animal that I can think of that has its own zip code. Go figure.
Yeah, and if we have a sec, I'd like to talk about a few what we see as common causes of wildfire here in Summit County and a few changes this summer. New this summer, our state legislator has made a higher penalty for abandoning campfires. That was pushed through by Representative Hamner right here in the High Country. Goes into effect July 1st. It is now a misdemeanor if you abandon a campfire that is not completely extinguished. You may face a fine and/or jail. So please remember the Scouts, where it's got to be cold and out, water in it, stir it. Your hand has to feel it cool to the touch. So no abandoned campfires this summer. The other thing we see as a potential cause is both legal and illegal fireworks. We discourage the legal fireworks. There are a few. They're the kind that do not fly or blow up. They still can start fires, including sparklers. And the illegal fireworks that we see in some neighboring states from Wyoming are not permitted on Forest Service or anywhere in Summit County. Leave the fireworks displays to the professional shows. You will see at Keystone Copper, Frisco, and Breckenridge this summer. They're done by professionals under permit, and they have a fire engine nearby.
Wanted to return to the fire ban levels again, and looking ahead, when it comes to putting out information on a fire ban, how could people make sure that they're staying up to date with where the ban is, what it affects, and what they're allowed to have?
Well, so fire restrictions are one thing. Now, daily, the fire danger levels, which Chief Barino and others collaborate on in establishing, those obviously will be reflected on our Smoky signs, and the Summit Daily News also will be posting those daily in the pages of the paper. As far as any restrictions go, those are established through the county sheriff's office and all in conjunction with and sometimes separately with the U.S. Forest Service. We'll do our best to put out the word through local media, through social media, through our websites, so that people know if we have any burn restrictions. As of right now, there's only one, and that's for Tenderfoot Mountain. The Forest Service just announced that last week, and that will last throughout the summer, mainly because Tenderfoot, the Fry Gulch area, is so dry, typically speaking, and gets so much traffic that they felt like they had to prohibit campfires of all sorts in that area. Otherwise, throughout the county, we just ask that you use good common sense, and do be aware, as the fire danger varies over the course of the summer, there may be an occasion where we have to enact a fire restriction. We try not to until conditions require us to.
Okay, and along with the conditions, the science conditions that you look at, another thing is people.
People, we have some busy weekends up here. People like to go in the woods. I like having a little campfire in my yard for some s'mores. We just need people to use common sense. If you are going to have what we allow, a recreational fire in your yard, it's best to tell your neighbors so they don't freak out. Let them know what you're doing. Completely extinguish your fire. Recreational fires are not allowed in the Breckenridge area from Memorial Day to Labor Day, but elsewhere in the county they are. So common sense, talk to your neighbors so they know what's going on. We do allow some permitted fires for large slash burns, but that needs to be done through your local fire department.
Great. Well, thank you again to both of you for coming in to talk a little bit about fire safety, fire bans, and Smokey the Bear. Now, can you still send mail to Smokey at his zip code? Would you know, Steve? Or is that something...
That is a great question. I imagine that the zip code doesn't get reused because it was so popular.
Yeah.
You know, so I would guess that if you wrote a letter, it would get delivered to that zip code. Now, whether or not Smokey will write back to you is another question entirely.
Depends on how busy the summer is for Smokey, huh?
Yeah, let's hope for the monsoon kicking in July and a safe summer. Keep an eye on each other. Use common sense.
Absolutely. Chief Barrino and Steve, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Phil Lindemann on Crystal 93.